Good evening, everybody. I'll call to order this meeting of the Climate Action and Planning Committee. Um, so I'll just repeat for the recording. We're still sort of working through the transitional bureaucracy from the fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 26 term, and we don't have a quorum of members who've been sworn in. So we cannot vote on anything tonight. But the work of climate action is still worth discussing, and we can do it in a public way, so that the residents of Milton can follow along with this work with us. And we have two of those residents here, Tucker and Dale Smith. Yes, so before we dive into agenda items, anything folks want to share from the sort of month and change since we were last together?
I'm eager to hear how your presentation went.
I'm eager to tell you about it. And hopefully my notes can be pulled up here. Yeah, I was expecting to have internet. I don't really, so I'll have to do it from memory, and you'll see how bad my memory is. Okay, yeah. So on Tuesday, I was on the agenda for the select board meeting. I gave them kind of an updated version of the report I gave in September. It's the the introductory material I think was relevant to the new members, and even the returning members have had quite a bit on their plate since they last heard from us, and therefore repeating. But the new content was really kind of slides on the key near-term actions for the 4 emission mitigation topics. In the interest of time, I did not go into the adaptation topics, although those did come up a bit in Q&A. And I tried to really crystallize an ask of them and make it a little clearer than it was back in September. So I told them, one, that we are, now that we have a draft plan, we're really ending the phase where this group working in isolation can make the kind of progress that it needs to make. I asked for their support with funding, but also like a moving in an engaged way towards endorsement and adoption, and that we needed their help, organizing for implementation and coming up with the resources, both financial and in terms of sort of staff bandwidth. I think another sort of new angle that was even sort of new to me as I was preparing to speak to them was a sort of focus on the process for getting certified as a climate leader community. The more I've learned about that, the more I think it provides a sort of structured process that has dedicated materials and technical support available from DOER and the consulting community. That overlaps with some of the key recommendations like electrification and energy efficiency roadmap studies for municipal facilities. It's actually a requirement to qualify for climate leader communities, and is in our sort of 2-year action list for building emissions. It also requires the town, to become eligible, towns have to, adopt a zero emission first vehicle policy. And so working towards that would be a really, a sort of focusing activity for town staff in terms of thinking about electrification of town vehicles. And what are the, opportunities and obstacles in that department. There was also a lengthy Q&A. So I would say the select board was pretty engaged and asked more and more thoughtful questions than last time. And there's a sort of an interest in identifying some near-term next steps, I think, for fall town meeting, actually. So, our charge is worded that was to develop this action plan for the consideration of town meeting. And also because the third eligibility criteria for climate leader certification that we haven't met yet in Milton is a municipal commitment to eliminate on-site fossil fuel combustion at municipal facilities by 2050. And so there was some discussion of what does that mean, and should there be a town meeting article behind that. So that was something they were interested in taking on as a next step, and also discussing what it would take to begin working on the climate leader community certification. And I don't know if we've talked about that certification much in this group, but the grant opportunities associated with it are significant. There are two kinds of grant opportunities that climate leader communities become eligible for. Planning and technical assistance grants up to $150,000. And then like project grants for specific projects that can be up to $1 million. So it's a really potentially significant source of funds to get the ball rolling on implementation. Is there anybody else who watched it who remembers more things that I've forgotten?
A couple of comments.
Yeah, there were. Yes.
First, I just want to compliment our chair in that Alex did a very nice presentation, very substantive, to the point, crisp, clear, and like would responded accordingly. They were engaged. From my perspective in viewing it, I had a conflict that night with the Conservation Commission, but did view it the following morning, and thought that their advice was well taken. Two of the salient points, one reiterating something that Alex just said, was to be preparing and putting forward for each of the town meeting members a warrant article from the work of the Climate Action Committee, and that will engage town meeting and the broader community, hopefully, in the up-ramping of climate action planning for the town of Milton. And the second was their willingness to establish a dialogue on staffing to support the climate action plan. And you're going to be having, if I remember correctly, a meeting with the chair, the town administrator, and yourself as to next steps in that regard, Alex.
Yeah, I don't remember sort of specific commitment to
Details were to be determined.
Yeah.
Get back on, but
But
they
that
took that step, which I thought was extremely positive. And then the third point that they brought up was charging stations in the town being expanded so that there'd be more visible support throughout the community for movement toward electronic vehicles.
Yeah, that was the question that Megan Haggerty asked, because in her work at Mass DOT, they are, she's sort of exposed to the, her agency's version of this plan. And I think actually she could be a very helpful, partner in refining the transportation, sections of the plan. So, yeah, I think I was hoping this evening to have kind of an open discussion with all of you about how to make the most of this moment. I think the meeting on Tuesday went well. But it'll be important to follow up. And yeah, I'm not a sort of crystal clear on what the right sequence of next steps are. So I think that an open discussion would be very helpful. Ron, would you like to say something?
Yeah, so it seems to me, based on what you said, I mean, I have not known about the climate leader, what it's called, climate leader program, but it does sound something that would really boost our engines, so to speak, if we were to get that. And if there is a push to come up with some kind of action plan by the fall town meeting, I would think that maybe we should devote most of our energies to trying to put that together and to deal with the 2 or 3 goals that you mentioned about putting town cars first in terms of zero emissions. I forget what the second one was, but if we could maybe channel the work we do around prepping for that and getting that in gear, I think that might really boost us.
Matt, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I agree with Ron. How much overlap is there, Alex? I know that's, an impossible question to answer without. Can you guys hear me okay? I think I'm getting some lag. Sorry, my Wi-Fi.
You sound good in here.
Okay, good. Let me keep trying. Yeah, so how much overlap is there between our plan and the climate leader certification? In other words, if we can, 50% of our near-term objectives by achieving that certification, that would seem to be, a pretty good path. And then the second question would be about legislating our way there. Right, these may be 2 parallel paths. I've never been thought about town articles as a way to, essentially commit the town, by law to achieving some of these objectives. So I'm all for those two. It'd be nice to be able to just go through our plan and be able to say, okay, legislatively through articles we get this, and through climate leadership we get this, and this, and then see where we're at.
Yeah, so I think it's worth repeating just for familiarity. So there's 6 eligibility requirements for climate leader certification. Milton has completed 3 already. Those were the building code, specialized building code, the being a green community, and having this committee. Those are 3 of the 6 eligibility criteria. The remaining 3 are a municipal commitment to eliminate fossil fuel use at municipal facilities by 2050. A zero emission first vehicle policy, and completing a municipal decarbonization roadmap study. So the overlap is, the high level purpose of the plan, zeroing out emissions in town. So that includes municipal facilities. So some kind of endorsement of the plan, I think, could qualify as that commitment. But I think we have to be thoughtful about what we put before town meeting. I just put myself in the shoes of a town meeting member. Well, first of all, I don't think the plan is like that close to being final, that we could finalize it with a robust public engagement process and familiarize town meeting members with the whole thing and ask them to approve all 50 pages of it. I mean, they're not gonna read the warrant and this whole document, right? So asking them to approve it as written in every word feels like a stretch. And I think that's not necessarily what we have to ask of them. Some creativity would be good. And then I think the overlap is really, the transportation plan definitely calls for decarbonizing the municipal fleet. This policy would be a coherent step in that direction. I think we have to understand what it really commits the town to financially, because zero emissions vehicles are not available for every kind of vehicle that the town operates. And even where they are available, they're not always cost competitive. So I think people will be very loath to sort of commit to unknown expenses over time, right? And same with the plan, so.
Yeah,
So
but
where-
what it is it's now turning it into a business case, if you see what I mean. This is why I like it. The plan is written today. We know we would have to start putting dollars and cents behind some of these objectives at some point. And to the extent that, this plan, or, I mean, maybe just stick on this plan, commits us to these business cases, just keeps getting us closer to making it tangible for people.
Yeah.
So again, it sounds to me like, get vehicle fleets being transitioned, isn't a massive part of our overall plan. Be nice if there was more overlap with our near-term objectives, but at least now we're getting into, okay, let's put our money where our mouth is. If we do X, it's going to cost us Y, and it gets us a little bit further down the road on our plan. That sounds interesting.
So couldn't we, between now and the fall, have two meetings? One with transportation people that are in charge with policy for the vehicles, and one with the building people that are in charge with the energy issue, to try and talk through with them what it would take, what it needs, develop something more concrete.
Yeah. Just in terms of timeline for a town meeting article, I think the warrant needs to be finalized sometime in August. So it would really be between now and our next meeting. We'd have to align on final wording for something that would be going to town meeting, and then we would have to commit to working through the process with the warrant committee and all, any other stakeholders that depending on what we put in there, it would sort of need to be at the table, and bring them in on it. And then there's a kind of town meeting member
But it seems
outreach component to that.
it would seem that our recommendations would have more cachet if we actually met with some of these people that are in charge of this.
Yeah,
That's going to be it's very important, because it would be an expectation of town meeting.
Yeah.
My between the lines takeaway from the meeting was that the suggestion of rolling this out over time in successive warrants, beginning with the November town meeting, would be also an educational and community enculturation process.
Totally.
So that, for example, because most people on town meeting, let alone most people in the community, don't know much about the committee or its work, let alone the substance behind it. So if we would have cherry picked something meaningful for November that was going to have a positive response, we work it out in such a way that the warrant explains to the meeting members and others what the article is about and where it falls within the plan, leading them to the plan so that they can gradually get to look at the bigger picture while they're also working on whatever it is that we isolate for the November town meeting. And then we do the same thing for the May town meeting, assuming there isn't one in February, which there could be. If there are budgetary matters, so there may be one in February, another one in May. And that would give us another opportunity if there is, recognizing, as was pointed out, that there'll be new town meeting members coming in the May town meeting after the April election.
Both Tucker and Hal have reached out to me with thoughts on this topic, so I want to invite them both to speak at will on that.
Ladies first.
Thank you, Alex and all. Hale and I both attended Tuesday night's meeting, and my personal perception was a noticeable difference kind of in vibe. I think the grabber that made them, and I was paying attention to body language, watching the board, was the sentence very early on, I think page 6 in your draft plan, that Milton's greenhouse gas emissions have increased by 3.6% since the baseline of 2017. And I saw, eyes, and it was, it prompted lots of comments about now is the time, there's momentum. There needs to be, and I think the metaphor you struck of a climate action plan is a long journey, but you have to start somewhere. And I think there was, very, very much, receptiveness to that. I won't go into it now, but I sort of offered to Alex, in terms of public outreach, or being able to have sort of a cadre of climate action plan allies, sort of general citizens who would be willing to schedule themselves for citizen speak. But before, doing that, really needing to know kind of what your strategy would be. I think that the next town meeting is in October, late October. And I think they said that the deadline for the warrant is pretty early August. So there's some time pressure. But kudos to the committee. I'm so grateful. And I have done a couple of pages of specific comments that I've shared with Alex, but they're not concise enough to share tonight, but I'll help in any way I can.
To Tucker's point, Alex, about outreach and also the notion of culturation and education, we might just sort of following up with the Connect Milton group.
Yeah.
Which is poised now to be doing that type of work on a town-wide basis.
Yeah, that I just wanted to share something that impression from the select board meeting that coming back into my brain now. I think a theme across multiple members' comments was, it's very comprehensive, it's daunting. What's the roadmap? What's the priority? Right. And I know I've heard actually that theme from you guys as well. Right. I've always kind of pushed to make sure that we put together a plan that's fairly comprehensive. But not because I think we're gonna then sort of make linear progress on all of it at once, but because we need a menu, we need something that demonstrates that you can't do one thing and declare victory, but you also need options because it may surprise us which of our sort of key action recommendations gathers some buy-in and momentum first, right? And then I think once we get to that phase, where I think there's a lot of value in having the plan and sort of meeting the sort of broad-based planning requirements to be eligible for significant amounts of state grant funding. Hopefully. But then we do want to get something specific and meaningful done. And that'll be 1, 2, 3, depending on how many people start leaning in and rolling up their sleeves. All right, I'm rambling. So, yeah, did you want to make a comment?
Would Kim want to go?
Oh, Kim, did you have your hand up? Okay, you're good.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm sorry, just scratching my face.
All right.
Well, I guess I would echo what both Tucker and Alex have said, is that the Tuesday night presentation was positively received by the select board. And my sense is they have really offered to this committee to what's the expression I'm looking for? Sort of grab the prize and put something before the town that can jumpstart this whole effort. And this is it's a 25-year effort. So I don't think the committee has to be overly concerned with scaring the town meeting members, because things can be done incrementally. And so sort of going back to what Ron said, I think it would be very helpful to have draft up a motion from this committee that would number one, say, let's become a climate leader community. And I think that's an easy lift, to be honest with you. I mean, it almost requires you to do nothing other than have a couple of approvals at town hall. Suggest that the town make a commitment to transition to EVs over the next 15 years. And you can start small. You can start with the police department cruisers as they
That's actually not the easiest place to start, but.
Well, I know that.
That was Richard Wells' first comment in September, if I recall, that it's difficult to do police cruisers because they don't.
Run long.
They're like running almost all the time.
Well,
they don't.
maybe that was a bad example, but there's got to be a few towns.
There's a bunch of kind of administrative vehicles out here.
That's
the low end.
building inspector's office, aggregate those individual departments and put them together as a group.
Yeah. And and those cars probably get replaced every 5 years, so I wouldn't be surprised if one or more of them is coming up for a replacement. And then as a third step, addressing the facilities. And I can tell you that my main interest personally is that I'd love to see the town accelerate decarbonization. And the two big pockets are transportation, which the town only controls its own fleet. So it's really the whole the rest of the town, which is going to be somewhat beyond the capability of the town meeting to dictate. Um, and buildings. And again, municipal buildings represent a small percentage of total, total buildings in Milton. But, I think that if this committee asks the town meeting for a small budget to conduct, a study to decarbonize one or more municipal buildings, I would be a bit surprised that they would, jump at it and say, yeah, make a start. Let's get going.
Can you get budget at the fall town meeting? Is that only a May town meeting?
I don't know, if maybe you can't get budget, but maybe you can get approval for a budget, something like that.
That would probably be something to build into the FY 27 budget process. That would be part of the May 26th town meeting. May 26th town meeting. agenda.
These things, they move slow. We just missed the vote in May.
Yeah, we did. And I think that gives a little bit of a cooling off period after the proposition to
Also,
override.
this budget
The bills that.
process was one of the more contentious and fraught ones I've seen, not that I've been around that long.
But I think, yeah, it's a good point for us to pursue and.
But I do think,
what-
do you wanna
what would
share
be a
the
leadership
specific-
facility,
yeah,
to do that with and to explore whether or not. It's economically advantageous to do them one at a time or. Maybe a couple of them at a time. We don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. That'll probably be in the facilities, consolidated
Right.
facilities department, they'll do that planning. And they already do that kind of planning,
They're
in the
very
normal course of
cooperative.
business,
Very
we're
good.
getting the energy manager, I heard in the meeting on Tuesday that the joint energy manager role with Randolph had been posted, the job description is out there, and I looked it up yesterday, it is indeed out there, I was a little concerned, it seemed, the salary range seems a little lower than I was expecting. And I think there was an issue with the funding requests that was granted, not including benefits. So it kind of looks like they got stuck with that total amount and adjusted the salary down accordingly. That's tough because there's a very public kind of salary band for people who are doing these jobs in municipalities that it's higher what they're offering.
And we have to look at our regional resources at the present time. We don't have a town engineer. That's a vacancy.
Yeah,
I think the building department has a temporary administrator. The director of planning and community development position is vacant. And recently the assistant director of planning and community development announced that she'll be leaving for another part of the country for personal reasons. So some critical positions are open, and I think as Alex adequately and accurately pointed out during his presentation, some of the departments like DPW are really understaffed and overengaged. They have a lot on agendas right now. So we have to be sensitive to that too, in terms of identifying where we're going. And have them with us, as Ron is pointing out.
yeah, so too, I mean, it has been hard to get slices of their time because they are so overstretched, and I really don't know what the right strategy is. I just keep
I think Nick
bugging them.
will be very helpful with that in the meeting that you all talked about having. They actually recommended having.
well, I think it would be helpful if the town could get some quick wins in this area.
They agree. That's where they were.
And you don't always have to spend a lot of money to do that.
do you wanna, sort of float the specific project idea that you've been putting energy into, or?
Sure, if you think it's appropriate.
I think, there's a brainstorming component to these meetings, so just inspirational.
Well, where to start? Tucker and I are members of First Parish Church, which is one of the two churches on either side of town hall. And I was very involved in getting the church to put up solar panels. And we actually did that in 2019. Using a sort of a combination of one third from donations from current parishioners, 1/3 from the endowment, and 1/3 as a loan from the endowment, which has really been paid back now. And after that successful effort, the parish voted the 100% buying in to the concept that the parish would go net zero by 2035. Now, this was in 2019. Didn't have a clue how it's going to get there. And, to some extent, we still don't. But it's a commitment the parish has made, because, it's, that's part of its faith orientation. So it occurred to me, and I've been sort of brainstorming, trying to figure out, well, how will First Parish get to net zero? And Tucker and I have experience with geothermal and solar. We installed both in our own home. And one of the most practical ways today for any building to reach net zero is a combination of sufficient solar and geothermal. Geothermal is even more efficient than air-to-air heat pumps, but particularly in this climate. So the thought occurred to me, boy, if we could get the two churches and the town hall to partner on a geothermal well field, it would probably be less expensive to do it as a group rather than, individually. So I approached RG at United Congregation Church, and I've actually met with Nick Connors and sent him a proposal to do exactly that, to have a public-private partnership to put in geothermal. This would be expensive. It'd probably be around $1 million is the cost estimate I have right now. But on a life cycle basis, it's the cheapest way to heat and cool a building equipment. Now, once you put the equipment in, it's much cheaper than fossil fuels. And that's kind of my pie in the sky idea. And I'm still trying to continue conversations with the town to see if they have any interest in partnering with the other churches.
And you've managed to get the facilities sort of strategic planning group at United Congregational Church thinking about this seriously as well. So, I think I can't remember which number it is, but our plan does call for exploring opportunities for distributed energy resources and projects like this within the town to improve energy efficiency and resiliency. And a good project like this would do a lot to sort of spread awareness. Hopefully in a positive sense.
Yeah. Well, there are, I don't know, I commented on Tuesday, when I participated in citizen speak with the select board, that there are, some examples of towns and institutions that have done exactly this. Eversource has put in a utility scale geothermal system in Framingham, which is, I think, heating and cooling something like 50 buildings. Salem, the city of Salem is in discussions right now, and they've received funding for consulting to put in geothermal for 21 buildings in downtown Salem. And the last example I shared was the first or village congregational church in Wellesley, and just decided to geothermal in their HVAC system. We wouldn't be the first, but we'd be certainly one of the early adopters. Direction. And the last point I guess I'll share is I consider myself kind of a student of climate change. I've been involved in it one way or another for over 25 years, and so I have no special expertise. But there's an organization called Climate Exchange, which is a nonprofit that studies policies and laws that are being passed in all 50 states, and they create dashboards that, well, on almost any subject you can imagine, will tell you what cities and states are doing for each kind of area involved with climate change. And they had a Zoom earlier this evening where they were reporting on the impact of the big beautiful budget that just got passed on climate efforts throughout the nation. And I mean, one of the few areas that has been preserved for climate in that bill is geothermal. That's funding, federal funding. But 30% funding is available through I think 2034, and then it starts to diminish after that. So that there's money out there to do this kind of stuff.
Any comments from the Zoom panel? Any thoughts?
Well, I just was thinking, but basically what Hale was saying, just to look to see what other towns, what laws they've passed that are sort of similar to what we're talking about for town meeting for the fall, so we could sort of just use that as a template and see what sort of support it got from the town meeting.
Yeah, I'm familiar with a sort of suite of towns passing declarations of climate emergencies in kind of the 2021, 2022 timeframes. It always struck me as a little symbolic.
Yeah, that's not very tangible, right?
I'd love for it to be something tangible. I think the quality of the discussion will be better if it is about something tangible.
Yeah,
Maybe,
yeah.
just to tie in on this, you could contact the Mass Municipal Association and see what they may have as awareness of, and maybe an inventory of articles.
I was just wondering on my way here, there was a database of articles I could search somewhere.
I'd be happy to contact them.
The idea of going to every town website and pulling up past town meeting articles made me want to cry. So,
So, I mean, I think that, we have a hook in terms of this climate leadership status that we should grab onto and try to focus to present something by the October meeting. Whether it's what you described, you know, a kind of general statement of application for wanting to be this, or something that's more specific, focused on EVs or buildings, or one of the recommendations that we need to meet to become a climate leadership town. I just think that's what we should do.
Yeah, I think it will be a lot easier to get a town meeting to direct town staff to do something actionable, like complete a municipal decarbonization roadmap study, right? From the beginning, I thought, they can't endorse a plan where like commit the town to doing everything in here when we have no idea what it will cost. So I think what you can commit to is always considering the climate friendly pathway when you're getting quotes, right? So I don't think a zero emission first vehicle policy. And I need to go do some research to determine whether my intuition here is actually true, but I doubt it commits you to buy the battery electric vehicle if it costs 100 times more than the fossil fuel one, right? The language that Wellesley used in their policy is that when commercially available and practicable. So I don't know how that plays out in practice, but I think asking people to commit to getting a quote for the battery electric vehicle, then that should be a policy, right? We should at least sort of do the legwork to try to make the climate solutions numbers work. And if the market gets away from us, the market gets away from us, right? The town can't solve climate change on its own. It can only commit to doing its best. So some sort of commitment that is clear that what we're committing to is doing the business case, right? Actually trying to make the numbers work for the climate solutions, but not necessarily. I don't see how town meeting could commit taxpayers to sort of unlimited spending.
Yeah, I mean, making an end commitment is not as important as responding
Right,
to the need to do something.
right. So do we want to crystallize any next steps? I think by the time we meet again, we may be sort of getting close to the deadline on warrant articles. Probably before we meet again, I'll try to have this meeting that you reminded me that they mentioned. My brain is turning into jelly. My wife has been on an international trip for the last week, and doing I'm really appreciating everything she does right now, so brain's falling apart. Yeah, so maybe how can I best sort of include this group in those discussions?
Do you want to call a meeting of the group after you meet with the town?
We can try, yeah.
Or couldn't you or someone create an outline of what we would submit to the board in October, and we all could contribute to that?
Yeah, I guess I'm still hearing quite a few different sort of possible directions for that. Could use more discussion offline, maybe one-on-one from the committee about, what direction to take that. But it sounds like the leading idea is some kind of push towards completing the climate leader certification requirements, one or both.
Yeah.
I mean, they're basically three. And we could aim a town meeting article at all three or one of the three.
Yeah.
And I think the next step for me is to reach out to DOER, who we have a points of contact at the DOER, who worked with us on like the building code. I think it's the same person for this. And say, okay, really talk me through the sort of nitty gritty eligibility process. What is a zero emission vehicle policy that is going to check this box, and what has to be in it, and what does that mean? Same with the decarbonization commitment. How does that? What forms can that take? Does it have to be a town meeting article or a select board vote or both? Or
Hey, Alex, just one really practical next step could be to upload our draft plan and upload the requirements or certification for climate leadership and have Gemini or ChatGPT say, look, where's the overlap? What's the, what dominoes are we knocking down here? And, at least we'd have some progress towards, what does this get us in terms of our plan? I mean, I can take that out. That's an easy one. Again, I'm looking for the overlaps here in terms of, we go for leadership, we get through things off our plan. So I'd be happy to take that as a next step if that could be helpful.
great, please, yes, I'd like to hear the output of that.
We advise what it actually gets us pleasantly.
Yeah, the municipal decarbonization roadmap study, I think, overlaps most with the this item 2 in the near-term action recommendations for buildings, which was to do energy efficiency and electrification pathway studies for all municipal buildings and incorporate that in capital planning. And from what I understand, the municipal decarbonization roadmap study is a fairly specific process that DOER has created with like spreadsheet templates and data collection requirements. And when I was at the Mass Energized Climate Community Leaders Conference in March, recent, I met some consultants who specialize in providing technical assistance on that process to towns. Don't know what the costs there are, but I think there's some free technical assistance available as well through DOER. So that's just one thing. I mean, now I'm remembering another thing that happened in the meeting is that we talked about coaching programs a fair amount, and that's one of my favorite recommendations. So like that's not in the climate leader certification process. But I thought the select board seemed enthusiastic about the idea of having programs that make life easier for residents. But I think often when you start talking about climate change, people start tensing up because they think you're going to take something away or force them to do something. So something that's focused on helping you do something and be successful on something you already plan to do, be very positive.
Sure. Well, I think in terms of the plan also, right? It's a living document. And so if we find out that, as we do this comparison or start getting into some of the details that it's missing from our plan, then we just go back to the climate action draft plan and, enhance some of those next steps, right? I think, which may get us further down the path. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Steve, I see your hand up.
Yeah, two quick things. One, I really like everyone's idea about this pursuing this climate leader. I think people like goals. They like to understand that it's a goal that means something outside of their own organization or community, and it leads to a sense of achievement. And so, I think that that's a good wagon to hitch yourself to. Um, Living in a space where don't always hear positive things about climate and climate change these days, I'm wondering, have we received any feedback to date from either the committee you were on or from community members about just what you were talking about, that feelings of things being taken away or being pushed on them, just being sensitive to the current climate per se, of are we hearing the whole story here so far from the community?
We're not hearing that kind of feedback, and I think that's because that's a sign that we have not yet made the community sufficiently aware of what we're doing. Right. So I'm sure that when we do, that we'll hear that. I mean, we heard a bit of it on the building code article process. But you know, I definitely worked very hard to strike a no unnecessary controversy, right? And I think we can be careful and strategic on the rest of the things that we bring out to the community. But to a certain extent, getting a little bit of that kind of resistance will be a sign that people are hearing about us, right?
Yeah, I just think we need to be strategic in
spending any money on this in any way from somebody. But if we pick our battles wisely, and that's another reason I like coaching, right? It'll cost a little bit, but I think a lot of companies, a lot of towns can go a long way on grant funding in terms of setting something up that really helps building owners voluntarily decarbonize and have a better experience. And that's not a huge capital investment for the town. So stuff like that could be relatively uncontroversial.
There is a reciprocal to Steve's important point, and that is going out and making sure that people are educated as to what the savings are going to be for them, what the protection is going to be for them, what it is that we do with town infrastructure that saves us millions of dollars down the road. Personal properties at risk in many instances, in many locations in the town, flooding. We cite that in the plan, but people need to know all of this information, and maybe there are ways in which we can say, yeah, there are these points and there are those points, and we have to put them into balance and figure out what the best course of action for the community as a whole is.
Yeah. Definitely. You know, there's always uncertainty when you talk about projecting costs into the future. So I think I definitely felt that when we were going through the process for the building code. You know, there was a lot of study results available that said that, you know, for most people in most cases, building the specialized energy code building is going to be lower cost overall. But we were going through an inflationary period, and both electricity prices and fossil fuel prices are rising rapidly. So, you know, anybody who tells you they know for sure what the relative price of electricity and natural gas is going to be 10 years from now,
Not these days.
selling you something, right? So, you know, for me as an individual, I sort of fall back on, well, what do I think is the right thing to do for my children? And if I can come up with reasonable projections and make the numbers look reasonable, reasonably responsible, then I'm willing to do that personally.
Well, I gotta believe that most citizens have some level of anxiety about climate change these days. And, I think that if the town could demonstrate a few examples of success where it has actually done something to address those concerns, that would be pretty well received.
Well, great. No, all right, is there anything else we should talk about? I'm definitely planning on coming back to the recording of this meeting and getting all your good recommendations written down so that I can focus on them over my coffee with a clear head.
Can you send out the climate leadership specifications?
Yeah,
Do we have to meet?
yes, so I added a section to the draft climate action plan in the last few weeks on the climate leader certification.
Oh.
And there's some summary slides in the select board presentation. So I sent an email out to all of you today that had a link to my presentation, a separate link that starts directly at the Q&A. And then a link to the presentation materials as well. And yeah, and the climate action plan now has a short section on climate leader certification, which I think links to the sort of DOER documents about it. And I think that's the next step, at least for me, is starting to dive in more detail. But rather than reading more of their documents, I think I just want to talk to somebody over there and see practically, what do I need to be aware of here? What also, Wellesley, I think, is one of the first towns to achieve climate leader certification. So we should maybe try to connect with folks who are involved in that and find out. First movers learnings with that. And I found, I think I put this in the Google Drive. I found their zero emission first vehicle policy on their website, and put that in our Google Drive. It's like a 3 or 4 page job. But it only went into force in fiscal year 26. So I don't know how many vehicles they've purchased since they've had that policy in place.
What it is over time, that maybe.
That'll be everybody's question, right? What's this gonna cost the town if we commit to battery electric vehicles? Although their policy sort of created a hierarchy of low emissions with battery electric at the top, and then hybrid battery electric, and then hybrid. Fossil fuel at the bottom. Okay, well, anything else folks want to talk about before we wrap up? Oh. So Arthur, I'm sorry that for a second meeting in a row, we are unable to vote on your letter to support the wetlands conservation law.
We'll get it.
But
Next meeting.
I have distributed the draft to folks. I was wondering if there's any discussion of it. We can't vote on it tonight, but if you had feedback for Arthur, it would save some time if you gave it to him now.
Or email me. If that's preferable to you.
Just wanted to give people the opportunity.
Motion to adjourn?
we're not allowed to vote, but I'll take the spirit of that, and thank you, everybody, for coming. Oh, and I also meant to, just share few words of appreciation for, our committee members who are stepping down this year. Feels a little empty with them not in the room, but maybe they'll watch the recording later. It's been a lot of hard work, and I think we made a lot of progress last year. Totally understand how life commitments and changing circumstances can't allow everybody to keep serving on the committee, but I hope that they will all stay engaged with the work on some level, and if only with their cheerleading. But again, thanks to all of them, and thanks to those of you who stuck around for another year of this nonsense. All right. Have a nice evening, and
Thank you,
see you
Alex.
next.
Thanks,
Bye.
Alex.
Thanks, everyone.
See you.
Have a good night.